After a day interning at Endeavor's agency, you bounded through the giant office floor, ensuring that you felt your toes brushed along the ground with every step. The long training session with Kido was grueling despite his friendly and forthcoming nature, but it wasn't as chaotic as that impromptu bout with Katsuki Bakugou. It taught you a valuable lesson: never to underestimate your opponent, and your abilities all the same. You felt a relief in not having to concentrate so hard in keeping yourself on the ground, but you felt the strain in your shoulders while carrying your backpack, filled with a weight or two to help you. It had been a couple of months now, and you had occasionally walked past Bakugo every so often, noticing his outings with Endeavor of all heroes along with two others, Endeavor's son, and the student that was recently involved with the Shie Hisakai incident. Still, with each passing, you came to recognize his glances at you, feeling his eyes on you whenever you were present in the same room. This sense of acknowledgement from the irate blonde felt odd in some way, but so did his mannerisms that contradicted most things you've heard of him, whether from the media or from others. It made you wonder how many layers made him whole, and what laid beneath that scowl. Exiting the agency left you with a few choices this afternoon while you righted your backpack with weights. Either go home for the day, explore the city for a while, or...
What are you doing?
Asked Bakugo from behind, exiting the agency with his bag slung over his shoulder and his earphones in place.
Just thinking,
you replied, staring off into the sky.
I was wondering what to do with the rest of my day.
You look spaced out.
Oh, do I?
You nervously chuckled under your breath, embarrassed by his observation. The last thing you wanted was to give him more ammunition for these nicknames, although they were growing on you a little.
Well, if you don't have plans...
How did everything go, Kachan? Asked Midoriya, walking out from the agency with a curious look. Aside from Bakugo's sudden irritation from the interruption, you turned to the boy with a smile. Did you succeed in that move of yours? Spoke a calm voice following after, spotting Todoroki in tow.
Like I tell any of you,
snapped Bakugo, his hair bristling atop his head.
There's no point explaining it when I'd rather show you how it's done.
What do you think? Immediately asked Todoroki, his eyes on you. It took you by surprise.
Oh,
You mumbled, unsure of your response while your eyes drifted towards Bakugo. More so for reassurance, if anything. Unfortunately, that scowl of his made him difficult to read. It almost felt threatening.
I'm just the target,
you replied, hoping that was sufficient of an answer. Oh, so you're still working on it, commented Todoroki dryly, his eyes on Bakugo.
Shut it, Icy Hot!
He snapped. You flinched at his violent response, but it was the same conversation. Most of the time. The three always discussed their work study, yet all of them still held their cards close. Bakugo was a primary suspect of this, always vague and elusive behind that gruff exterior. The few weeks conversing with him at the end of each day was highly amusing, and sometimes entertaining. While the three conversed, you received a text, responding to it quickly while also trying to keep engaged with your present company. You smiled at the words before pocketing the phone away, returning to the end of the conversation before Midoriya turned to you with a smile. "Want to join us?" he invited, his grin wide with joy.
Huh? We're heading back to UA, but seeing it's Easter, maybe you'd like to join us tonight. The school's allowing guests over for the holiday.
The invitation caught you off guard, especially from Midoriya, of all people. However, you had learned he was always welcoming to others, and often looked out for everybody. You glanced at Todoroki and Bakugo, finding one to be nonchalant while the other still held that scowl.
Sure, I'm happy to be chaperoned by you three.
You agreed, accepting the offer. Midoriya grinned before he began to make the journey to the academy. You followed suit, along with Todoroki and Bakugo in tow, while you happily made conversation with Midoriya, who responded in kind. In your conversation, you glanced back at the two behind with a smile, both of them moody as usual, yet still acknowledging your presence. Bakugo, meanwhile, eyed your smile while he noticed your feet lightly tapping the pavement, matching Midoriya's step. It had only been a few weeks, a couple of months, on and off, while the both of you trained when time ever permitted between his work study and your interning. You had been tolerable at best, understanding and challenging, each of you learning more about one another to the point that you wanted to prove your usefulness. He smirked at the thought, knowing his teasing only fueled your determination to prove that to him. However, if not for his sensibilities, Bakugo sulked in the fact that Midoriya invited you, and not him. He wanted to ask, and yet was thwarted by interruptions and unfortunate timing. Despite his loathing for celebrations and festivities, it still left a bitter taste in his mouth, still fixated on your smile during the walk, the smile you sported when you wanted to drive a point home. He almost wondered if you were up to something. The walk to UA was filled with conversation for the most part, at least between Midoriya and yourself, while the two that trailed behind stayed silent, sans for a few words shared and the occasional irate response. The tall white gates were in view, the same ones you became familiar with after visiting the grounds a few times during the school semesters. Given entry by the boys through security, you stepped onto the grounds, familiarizing with the pathways you've come to recognize. The trees swayed in the chilly breeze that picked up that evening, dancing languidly amongst their canopies while you continued to walk with the three towards the shoe lockers of the school. You had questioned once why return to the school when the dormitories were close by, learning that they still needed to collect their normal shoes from their lockers. It seemed strange, but in hindsight, you thought not to question the protocols around UA, considering the events that made it a prime target as of late. While the boys went about to their lockers, you waited outside, soon spotting three familiar faces racing towards you from the courtyard.
Hey!
Yelled Kaminari with a grin.
You guys made it back in one piece! I guess they managed their patrol time with Endeavor today.
You commented with a shrug.
Or there was hardly anything at all.
Mused Sero with a grin.
How have you been? Has Bakugo been hard on you today?
Chirped Kirishima while he ruffled your hair roughly with his palm.
Kirishima, stop!
You chuckled with a smile, enduring his manhandling a little. You had come to learn more about Bakugo's friends after that stint with him back at Endeavor's agency, having been invited by Midoriya a few times to the school grounds when permitted. It opened up a new world for you, finding that despite the prestige of the school, the students of the hero course were all normal and down-to-earth people. At least some of the time. Bakugo watched from his locker at the site, his friends cheerfully greeting you by the grounds outside of the locker rooms. He swelled with pride seeing how well you fit with his friends, but it also made him wonder about your inclinations. Were you getting a little too close to them? He sighed under his breath while he opened his locker with a click, its door unlocked until Bakugo's ear turned towards the aisle in front of him, not hearing a peep or a word. He knew that Midoriya's locker was in that direction. His attention drew behind him this time, knowing that was Todoroki's locker. Without thinking though, he absent-mindedly opened his locker door until a flood of red letters poured from Bakugo's locker, crashing onto the floor. On each of them they were stamped and covered in decorative heart-shaped designs, all addressed with his name written in a cursive hand. He stared at the pile, eyeing all that laid by his boots with both a dread and an annoyed look on his face. Fan letters. Confession letters. Valentine's was way overdue. Who did this? Who arranged for this in his locker? Who in the world? The sound of multiple cameras broke his gaze at the pile of letters before he turned to face Kirishima and you waving at him from the entrance. In your hands was your phone, framing Bakugo in view. You turned to spot Kaminari with his phone capturing Midoriya's flabbergasted expression, while Sero captured Todoroki's nonplussed one.
April Fools!
All of you yelled out loud, the fit of laughter ringing through the locker room while the embarrassed and irate responses of the poor souls echoed from within.
Dumbasses! April Fool's was 2 days ago!
Roared Bakugo from inside, his voice carrying through the laughter.
We couldn't do anything on the actual day, so we opted to prepare while all of you were on work study,
admitted Kirishima.
It was so worth it,
piped Kaminari.
Guys, you can't do this to us after the day we had.
Yelled Midoriya, both embarrassed and flustered from the amount of green everywhere at his feet.
Come on, we almost got you, didn't we?
Asked Sero, watching Todoroki's aloof expression turn to him with the amount of blue letters by his boots.
I even got you, Todoroki.
This is not amusing,
spoke Todoroki. Bakugo fumed until he realized the weight of the letters that laid atop his boots. They felt a little heavier than they should, at least for scraps of paper. At least for a prank. Curious, despite his irritation, he picked one letter from the floor, finding it a little thick in his fingers, but enough for it to still slip through the locker doors. Opening the letter, Bakugo was taken aback, finding a piece of paper-thin chocolate neatly packaged inside, the sweet aroma of caramel wafting into his senses. The atmosphere must have changed with Midoriya and Todoroki, he thought, feeling the sense that they too had a peek into these fake letters. Midoriya awed at the sight of the chocolate in his hands, as did Todoroki, in slight confusion.
Happy Easter!
You piped ahead.
I felt bad convincing everyone else to prank all of you, so I made some treats to soften the blow. Hope they haven't melted waiting all day in your lockers.
You watched Bakugo glare at both Kirishima and yourself, already suspecting how everything was set up while you were interning at Endeavor's agency.
I won't invite you back here next time, lightweight,
growled Bakugo, baring his teeth and sneering at the both of you. You heard the chuckles from Kaminari and Sero as they joined Kirishima and yourself with phones in hand. Eventually, all three pranked students collected their Easter rewards, placing them in their bags. Bakugo more so stuffed his letters violently while he eyed you smiling and laughing with the others. His friends, even. He deeply sighed, exhaling to himself before he stood to his feet, still annoyed by the earlier incident.
Hey, you staying for some fun at our dorms tonight?
Asked Kaminari, catching Bakugo's ear.
Yeah, Midoriya invited me while we were leaving the agency. You're allowed guests?
You quipped.
Yeah, only a few. But you've been on campus before, so I guess it's not an issue for you,
commented Kirishima. Bakugo mulled over the thought. True, you weren't a stranger to the school's grounds. In fact, you knew very well of most students on campus. That day of training followed with a conversation between the both of you yielded that much. But he wondered why you had an interest in him, despite it being mostly skewed by the media or from rumors spread from those who didn't know any better. The weeks between your interning and his work study became an understanding. You felt different. Patient to learn more about the most talked about student in Class 1A, only to debunk the rumors about him. Bakugo felt that was your only objective, and yet he wizened to your tricks of the trade, watching your every move. His eyes drew back onto you, noticing you slipping your backpack onto your arms to relieve your shoulders from the strain. A light hop in your step signaled to him how your weight distribution affected your stance. But you did not show any inkling of it to his friends. Bakugo thought it merely that his friends didn't know any better, didn't quite understand how much effort it took to keep you on your toes. Until he spotted Kaminari take your backpack from you. The panic in your eyes ensnared Bakugo's gaze before your feet quickly swept from under. Kirishima reached out to grab you, only to slip your fingers with his, causing your body to swing violently in the air. With no sense of balance, you twirled and twisted, trying every means to right yourself while the world spun around.
I'm sorry!
Yelled Kaminari, realizing the weight's in your backpack too late. You heard his distant cry, gauging how far you had floated before your momentum soon slowed and your equilibrium centered. You found yourself upside down, your legs floating upwards towards the sky when suddenly a large hand grabbed onto your wrist. Bakugo, still in UA uniform, held onto you tightly, his hands smoldering from the blast that catapulted him up into the sky. Through the rushing wind and turbulence, you didn't hear him on approach, soon finding his body weighing you down while he descended towards the earth. He pulled you into his arms, keeping a good hold on you before his feet slammed into the ground. Everything was still while you held onto Bakugo, his glare glowering down at you still in his arms.
Thanks.
You uttered with a nervous laugh. All you were met with was that stare, the same one he would give you at the agency every time you passed one another in the halls.
Whoa! Good job, man!
Yelled Sero from behind.
Are you two okay?
Called out Midoriya.
Fine!
Barked Bakugo, standing to his feet with you still in his arms.
Just what the hell, dunce face? I'm sorry! I didn't know!
Apologized Kaminari, holding out the backpack to Bakugo while he surprisingly gently dropped you to your feet with an arm around your shoulders.
They've never mentioned their quirk and I— Shut it!
Interrupted Bakugo with a sneer, snatching the backpack from Kaminari.
Whoa, hey, Bakugo, chill,
spoke Kirishima, eyeing the almost murderous look in Bakugo's eyes.
It's okay,
you reassured, taking the backpack from Bakugo's hands.
He knows now. My fault that I didn't mention it sooner.
A huff from Bakugo relaxed his shoulders and his intense glare at the group, but did not release his arm from your shoulders despite the fact that you had your weights back. It was odd to find comfort in the way Bakugo would hang off from you, but you knew why he did so. It was exactly the same as the first day when you naively walked into his training session. He weighed you down. He kept you grounded. And, oddly so, despite his gruff and imposing nature, it felt—
Hey babe!
Called a voice from afar, catching everyone's attention towards the dormitories. A tall figure strode closer towards the group, but still kept his distance, impeccable in his uniform. He stared at the group of hero students, eyeing Bakugo's arm around your shoulder before he smiled brightly.
Thought I'd find you hanging around here. I was worried you didn't see my text.
You smiled at the student, waving before you turned to the group.
See you guys tonight? For Easter?
Sure,
chirped Midoriya.
Hope you enjoy your chocolates.
You piped, turning to Bakugo, who still held your shoulders. That stare was still plastered on his face, before he grunted, releasing you while you swung your backpack onto your back. It wasn't long until you made your way towards the student, walking beside him before he soon wrapped his arms around your shoulders, leading you towards the dormitories in tow. From behind, Bakugo watched you until you were only a speck in the distance, still intently listening to the conversation at hand.
To think they're already taken,
whined Kaminari.
And by a management student, no less. Kaminari, is that all you think about?
Questioned Sero.
Both you and Minute are getting worse by the day. Hey, at least I have some taste. Don't worry, they'll swing by for Easter.
Motioned Midoriya while they began to make their way towards their dorms.
We better get moving and help out the others anyhow.
Alright. Majiro was going on about how the girls have been cooking a storm, along with Sato,
commented Kirishima. Soon the voices grew a little distant, while Bakugo still stood there, watching you disappear ahead. What was this feeling? He thought. He couldn't quite grasp it. The past month or two opened something foreign to him, always watching out for you in the halls, or in the training rooms. He wanted you to see him. And only him. But what was this feeling? Bakugo turned behind him, recognizing that sense of being watched, to find Todoroki standing there, staring at him curiously, his aloof expression showing no reaction to Bakugo's annoyance. With a huff, the blonde tucked his hands in his pockets before he too made his way after the others, soon being followed by Todoroki.
You should talk to them,
spoke Todoroki, catching Bakugo's ear.
It's none of your business, Icy Hot.
He spat in kind.
I've heard some things about their partner. And not good things either.
That sneer only deepened on Bakugo's face. The last thing he wanted was to hear any strain of hope.
Shut up, half and half.
He spat again.
Just think about it, Bakugo.
Ended Todoroki before he began to walk ahead, leaving Bakugo behind. The blonde stared at the jewel-haired student's back, wondering what to do. He never admitted it, but he felt powerless, out of control, and for something that was alien to him that it only irritated him more. Bakugo soon reached his dorms, spotting the large sign ahead. Tonight was going to be miserable, surrounded by the idiots of his class, even though he knew better that they all held a special place in his heart. Much like you, staring ahead down the path to find that management student with his arm around you, conversing and holding you close. The closer he felt he could be near you, the further you walked away.
See you tonight, Twinkle Toes,
he murmured to himself. Just friends. Nothing more, he thought. Thank you for tuning in to another fanfiction reading. If you enjoy what I do or would prefer to just fall asleep to my voice, please hit that like button, ring that bell, and subscribe to my channel. I was actually feeling a little angsty. I guess that's the way I would describe this one. But for an April Fool's Easter kind of thing, this idea just popped in my head, and I believe I have explained in many of the Q&As or in a few that the Bakugo's timeline does hold a kind of special place, where I guess all the events occur. So I hope to write a bit more just to fill in a few pieces and fodder here and there. But I hope you enjoyed. And thank you for visiting. I hope to hear from you soon, next we meet.